inflation. Today, we are specifically looking at how it's impacting women. So we invited an expert, Ria Jusufbegovic, Ethiopia Country Director for Action Against Hunger, to discuss how women in Africa are especially impacted by rising cost of living as well as food insecurity. Ria is joining us by Skype from Ethiopia. Ria, tell us, African countries are not only impacted by the rising cost of living, but also by food insecurity. How is the combination of these two impacting women?
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. So globally, we know that level of hungers remain alarmingly high. And in 2021, they basically surpassed all the previous records. And in 22, we're expecting them to deteriorate even further. And women are disproportionately affected by hunger in many countries. We know that nearly in 2 out of 3 world countries, women are more likely than men to suffer from hunger and food insecurity. So in the face of climate shocks in Africa, we are seeing the increased competition for resources such as wood and water. And this often translates into women walking long distances in search of water and wood, which exposes them to higher risk of violence and impacts their ability to do any other chores that are awaiting for them at home, such as childcare, cleaning, cooking, looking after sick and elders, attending to their farms, and etc. So women and girls, typically what we are seeing, are paying a much higher price in any crisis. And this is due to traditional roles and the gender inequality that already exists, but it only gets worse in the crisis. Studies have shown that women unduly suffer the impact of disasters and severe weather events and climate changes because of the cultural norms and an equitable distribution of roles, resources, and power. So we also, on the ground, we see the increase in harmful traditional practices, such as early marriages, sometimes without this, but also to reduce the burden on the family. And this puts a lot of young women at risk. At risk of abuse and neglect and underdevelopment. In crisis, these girls get much younger in age, which increases their chances for malnutrition. There's also a lot of evidence of increased domestic violence at home, which we already seen in COVID, but this time it's linked to reduced livelihood opportunities for men and increase.
And that you're very much right, and you touched on a little bit about how exactly it is impacting women in terms of hunger. We know that women always give more of themselves financially, food-wise, and so forth. And is there any studies or is there any assessment that has been done on how much women are malnourished in terms of during this particular season? And hopefully that research or that data can help us to probably advocate for women's nutrition needs.
Yeah, so we do have a data that in East and Horn of Africa, currently due to drought, we have 36 million people that are food insecure. And about 3/3 of them are women and children. Definitely. So, and we also know that at least 20 million people are already walking each day to high levels of acute food insecurity and rising malnutrition across East Africa. And I would say particularly in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia that are facing unprecedented drought.
So, Ria, the question that I have for you is, we saw that in Mombasa, a woman made reference to gardening. So she's decided to do subsistence gardening to kind of lessen the cost of her upkeep, I would say. Have you seen any other strategies that women are using to cope up with the inflation?
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing strategies with the women that we are serving as the Action Against Hunger, the most marginalized women. We do see them coping. We see them coping long distances and seeking assistance. We see them in search for food and water. We see them taking their children away from the conflict and drought as well. We also, agencies such as Action Against Hunger and some of our other partners are also recognizing that emergencies don't affect everyone in the same way, and that women, particularly adolescent women, and girls are typically at a higher risk. And we are focusing on designing programming with kind of that in mind as well. At the current time, I would say we're really focusing on life-saving assistance, but the longer-term approaches are also necessary to address the humanitarian impacts of the food.
Maybe along what you are saying, is there anything that can be done, maybe in terms of policy by governments or international community to address this challenge of women specifically?
I mean, there is a lot of things. I think it depends on the country where you are in Africa, but what we're seeing the women often are actually restricted from owning the land, which is a big impediment for them to get the loan without any kind of titles, to be able to recover their businesses after droughts. There's a lot of things. And I think, traditional gender norms are, as I said, that already exist, are kind of exaggerated in these crises. There's also, the governments could be investing into the safety net social programs that are usually reaching the millions of the people in the rural areas and could really help and save some of this population in the crisis like this one.
Thank you so much. That was Ria Jusufbegovic, Ethiopia Country Director for Action Against Hunger. Thank you so much for joining us from Ethiopia to discuss how women in Africa are disproportionately affected by inflation and food insecurity.